Dear friends, today's first and the Gospel readings give us the parables of the vineyard with some minor variations. Let us try to reflect on these parables. Firstly, let us try to reflect over God's action towards the Israelites. The first part of both the parables speak of what God, the owner of the vineyard, did to his vineyard, the Israelites. Firstly, he fenced around it. The Gospel speaks about it. Secondly, he built a watchtower. Both the Gospel and the first reading talk about it. Thirdly, he cleared it of stones. The first reading talks about it. Fourthly, he hewed out a wine vat. Both the first reading and the Gospel talk about it. The above four actions of God metaphorically refer to four types of things God did towards the Israelites. Firstly, the fencing around and building watchtower. These two actions of God refer to God's protective care towards his people. Fencing around refers to short-term protective care of God. Fence is something that protects a vineyard from the immediate and impending dangers that come from outside. God did certain things in order to express his protective care towards the Israelites in the immediate context. For example, when the Israelites were coming out of Egypt, God gave them manna when they were hungry, made water come out of rock when they were thirsty. When the Egyptians followed them, he made the sea divided and also protected them in the form of a pillar of cloud and of fire. Building a watchtower refers to the long-term protective care of God. Watchtower is that through which a God has got a broader and longer vision of the surroundings of the vineyard. God did so many things that manifested his long-range vision for his people. For example, he had prepared the land of Canaan for them. He brought the different tribes of Israelites under one kingdom. He made the Redeemer born from them. It is this second type of loving care that is symbolized by watchtower. Secondly, he cleared the vineyard of stones. It refers to the fact of God removing stony things from the midst of the Israelites. One important thing that is required of human beings to bear fruit of love and compassion is a heart of flesh, not a heart of stone. It is a stony heart that is responsible for much of violence, hatred, undue anger, injustice, selfishness, etc. in the world. On the other hand, a heart of flesh seeks whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise. The second reading. But unfortunately, the Israelites oftentimes developed a heart of stone in themselves. So God had to proclaim through the prophet Ezekiel, "A new heart I will give you, and a new spirit I will put within you. And I will remove from your body the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." Ezekiel 36:26. Thirdly, he hewed out a wine vat. A wine vat is that which is used to get the wine out of grapes by crushing them. It refers how God brings the best out of people through the process of suffering. In today's second reading, St. Paul speaks of peace of God which surpasses all understanding. To harvest such peace, it is important that a person goes through a tremendous amount of self-purification. Now, my dear friends, let us reflect over the Israelites' response towards God. Even though God did only the best towards his people so that they bear fruit abundantly, Their response to him was something contrary to his expectations. The second part of the parables talk about it. He expected justice but saw bloodshed, righteousness but heard a cry, says Isaiah. The gospel strikes a minor note of difference here. In the gospel, Jesus does not say that the vineyard did not bear fruit. Rather, it is the caretakers of the vineyard who bear the blame. In other words, Jesus does not much talk about Jewish people in general. Rather, he makes the Pharisees and the scribes take up responsibility for the pitiable situation of the ordinary people. The parable was aimed at the leaders of the Jewish society, not at the ordinary people, whereas the parable in the first reading was aimed at the whole nation of Israelites. Apart from this subtle difference between these two parables, the common thread that runs through both the parables is that human beings' response to God is not right and just. They did just opposite of what God expected. Now, my dear friends, coming to our lives, if we try to keenly become aware of how much of love and care God pours upon us, we will really become breathless. It can be said that God always does the best at the most appropriate time. It is God's very nature that He cannot do anything other than the best. Here it has to be kept in mind that what God offers is not the best fruit, but the best tool so that we bring out the best fruit. Naturally, these tools are most of the times in the form of suffering. It has to be kept in mind that the purpose of suffering is not to break us, but to make us. It's not to make our lives bitter, but better. But what we produce in return to such a tremendous love and care of God is something worth pondering. There is a difference between the vegetable kingdom and the human kingdom. The vegetable kingdom receives the worst from us, that is the filth and the rotten, but gives back the best to us. We, the human, receive the best, and we know what we produce. Let us pray. Loving Father, help us always to keep in mind the words of your Son, Jesus, that we have been created to bear fruit, and the fruit that lasts. Amen. John 15:16.